Thank you for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. We appreciate your interest in health and wellness. However, it is important to note that the content provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information shared here is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The hosts and guests featured on Everything's Messy podcast are not licensed healthcare professionals, and the discussions within the episode should not be considered as personalized medical guidance. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided by Everything's Messy podcast or its guests is solely at your own risk. This podcast may discuss general health topics, lifestyle choices, and wellness trends, but these discussions should not be interpreted as individualized medical recommendations. Every individual's health needs are unique, and what works for one person may not be suitable for another. We encourage you to consult with a healthcare professional before making any significant changes to your diet, exercise routine, or health practices. Everything's Messy podcast and its hosts are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information provided during the podcast. Remember, your health is a personal matter, and professional medical advice is essential for making informed decisions about your well-being. Thank you for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. Everything's Messy podcast brought to you by Dreamweaver Media. So, incredible company. I'm so excited that I've had the chance to work with this company. Let me tell you, if you are looking to level up your podcast, level up your business, anything that you need to get very clear and laser focused with your goals for your company, you need to reach out to Dreamweaver Media. They have a strategy session report that they will do for you. And what that will do is you will discover your dream audience persona, define your business's why, craft a brand identity that speaks directly to your target audience, identify your marketing goals, and create a custom plan and receive a detailed visual shoot plan that brings everything to life. Let me tell you, this company is amazing. So reach out to dreamweavermedia.co. That's dreamweavermedia.co. Check out their website for more information. Hey there, it's Sarah Wilson, and welcome to Everything's Messy podcast. Yep, you heard it right. Everything is messy because, well, it is. But here's the thing. In the mess, there's strength waiting to be found, and that's what we're all about here. My mission? To break the silence around chronic illness and build a community that's supportive, understanding, and downright empowering. So if you're ready to navigate the chaos, buck the conventional medical system, and embrace authentic healing, you're in the right place. We're going to tackle the big questions like how to balance it all, where the family fits into the messy equation, and everything in between. This is your messy space, a place where we're not afraid to get real, have those important conversations, and maybe even share a few laughs along the way. I'll be sitting down with incredible people, each with their unique methods to explore their stories, experiences, and the lessons they've learned in the chaos. From unconventional healing methods to finding strength you never knew you had, we're covering it all. So grab a seat, get comfy, and let's dive into the messy. Because here at the Everything's Messy podcast, we're turning chaos into strength. Together, we're going to embrace the mess. Are you ready? Let's get messy. Hey, messy people. Welcome to Everything's Messy podcast. I am your host, Sarah. Let's get messy. Today, I've got a great interview lined up for you. Let's get to it. I am so excited. I've got John Lawyer with me today. And let me just preface really quick. What an incredible story that I was able to watch your video. Just absolutely wonderful. Welcome, John.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I love the concept of the show, too.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Everything's messy. It really is. And everyone has a messy story. And you are definitely in the mix of that. Well, first, where are you coming from?
Right now, I'm in Oklahoma. I'm at my mom's. I'm usually live in North Texas, but my wife and I have been up here. My mom just needs a little bit of help, so we're up here for a couple of months.
Okay. All right. That's good. I've got a lot of family in Texas. Are you in the Metroplex?
I'm north of Dallas, like northeast of McKinney, so kind of out in the woods, rural part.
You guys have seen a great big boom of population out there, haven't you?
Oh, it's crazy. Even we're way out, but there's a total huge amount of construction and infrastructure going in and around us right now, even way out where we're at.
That's crazy. Yeah, every time I go back and I visit, I just see it. It used to be, small town and, you could get from point A to point B. Now there seems to be lots of people, lots of traffic, lots going on. So, all right. So Texas you are. So is that where you're originally from, is Texas?
I'm actually originally from Oklahoma. I grew up here.
All right. Any big messy tornadoes that you've been through?
I've been around tornadoes. Like I've never been hit by one, but like at night, there's been a couple that have been near misses, both in Oklahoma and later on living in Texas. So yeah, I've had plenty of experience. Like we had one a few years ago around Christmas time, and when there ended up a pair of pants on our property in Texas that still had like a wallet and like change and stuff in it.
Oh my gosh.
It had been like a pair of pants that someone had out on their porch or something. I don't know. It's pretty wild what tornadoes
That's
do.
crazy. That's definitely messy. All right. So again, we are all about the mess. John, so why don't you just get right into it and tell us your messy story?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a small town in rural Oklahoma. It was about 8,000 people. It was a good childhood. Life was good. There was an oil boom, lots of money in town. My dad owned an auto parts store for 30 years with my grandpa. And mom was a teacher, had an older sister, just typical, I guess, American family. And so I would say around my freshman year, like middle school years, things started to get messy as it is. My parents started to have issues, money issues. My sister went off to college after my freshman year, and my parents got divorced. And so once I was, middle of high school, it was kind of like a completely new experience for me because my family had kind of fallen apart. My dad lost his company and he didn't want to go work for anybody else. And so he became a trucker and he would send me money. I lived by myself actually for my last 2 years of high school. So I lived on
Wow.
my own. And he would send me money and I would take care of the house and go take care of my grandparents from time to time. And so that was a different kind of childhood, kind of growing up, the later half of my childhood, like the older part of my childhood. Um,
Seems like lots of resilience built in those years, huh?
I think so. I think it definitely helped prepare me for the world. And I was resilient, and I've always been kind of a positive person, and I've always been kind of a kind person. I've had my moments. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some people that would argue with me about that, but for the most part, I've been kind. It did kind of prepare me for the world, I think. And I didn't go to school much. I missed a lot of school. And there were bets on whether I'd graduate or not. I did, and I knew college wasn't for me. I figured it'd be a waste of everybody's time and money if I went to college. So I joined the Army straight out of high school, and that was about a year before 9/11 that I joined. So by the time I got done with basic training and my job training, I was a counterintelligence special agent. I went for training for that in Fort Huachuca in Arizona. And by the time I got to my first like permanent duty station at Fort Gordon, Georgia, I was only about 6 months before the war started.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it kicked off, I got to my unit and I got assigned to a permanent, like, it was a counterterrorism cell that I was a part of. So I was actually working in a top secret facility the morning of 9/11. I was on night shift. And so we were still on shift when it happened. And, and obviously we knew that our life had just changed.
Yeah. Wow. And can you say, were you stateside or were you abroad?
Yeah, I was at Fort Gordon then
Okay.
at the skiff there on the base, and I had already been scheduled to go to Kuwait on like a regular assignment, and so that's where I went. And I would spend about 2.5 years of my 5 year enlistment in Kuwait, uh,
Wow.
um, supporting troops in Afghanistan. Kuwait's where we invaded Iraq from, and then afterwards, my wife had the very similar job to me, and we kind of had to decide if we were going to stay in the Army, get out, and if we were going to go back and like work in Washington, D.C., or we're going to stay overseas and keep doing that. So that's what we did. We became civilians doing the same thing that we were doing overseas. So we kept, we went to Baghdad for 18 months, and then we had a stint of about 6.5 years consecutively in Kandahar, Afghanistan.
Wow. Yeah, so I want to just shift a little bit. We had started talking before I hit record, and for those of you who can or want to, I really encourage you to go look at John's video on YouTube and just kind of gives a brief, behind the scenes of his life. But one of the things I found interesting was that you got married in Kuwait and that your marriage license is actually in Arabic.
Yeah, we we were together most of the time, but they were going to send her home and keep me there for a year. So we decided to go ahead and get married. We'd planned to get married when we got home, but they decided to keep me there. So yeah, we got married at the Kuwait Ministry of Justice and had a
That's what it says.
reception.
They have something like that. That's what it's called. They have something like.
Yeah, Ministry of Justice. It's the National Ministry of Justice, and uh, there were some ladies there that were Kuwaitis and like kind of like justice of the peace kind of.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's that's an interesting and unique wedding day, I would say.
Yeah, my best man was armed.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, it was different. But we were in civilian clothes. We were wearing like I was wearing a suit. She was wearing a dress. Uh, so it was we were able. I was a counterintelligence agent, so I was able to like coordinate stuff off base, and like I could wear. I worked at the embassy on and off, so I was able to coordinate some of the paperwork through there. So it helped. My job actually helps me be able to make it kind of happen.
That's good. That's good. And you've been married now how long?
20 years. So
Congratulations.
thank
That's a
you.
big feat, especially in these days. So that's
Yeah.
good to hear. Sounds like you guys have been through a lot.
Yeah, we have. We have. It's been good almost all the time.
Almost all the time. Something my husband would say.
Yeah.
So then back to your story of serving, which by the way, thank you so much for your service and your wife. That's really big and important that I say thank you for that. Um, so as you're over there, you kind of talk about this spiritual awakening that sort of happened. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So while I was serving, I was kind of my spiritual awakening would come later on after I'd kind of been damaged and I would later kind of heal a little bit after we got back. But
And you're
over there,
specifically talking damage from the war, just what you saw and things like that.
I was damaged mentally. I came home with anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, hypervigilance. I also had physiological problems. I had Gulf War syndrome and sleep apnea and migraines and
Wow.
a whole like systemic thing going on. And so yeah, I was completely kind of broken when and my wife was too when we came home because we I guess out of the first 15 years of my adult life, I guess I spent about 11 or 12 of those years in combat zone.
Mhm.
And I think the longer I was part of that kind of like dark machine, yeah, the more you like, you're not idealistic anymore about like making the world a better place or stopping terrorism, or you start to realize like it's all very political. The enemy is not so much the enemy, it's just a bunch of other humans. And
Mhm.
you realize the machine's grinding them up, it's grinding you up, it's grinding the civilians in between that are just, kind of there. It's grinding them up. So you start to realize the machine's just this giant, kind of dark thing. And so the longer I was exposed to it, the harder it got to be part of it. So when we got home, we had kind of all of that to deal with. I didn't really have an identity when I came home. I didn't know
Wow.
who I was. I didn't really have a sense of self because like all I had ever known was this job. Like I was dedicated to it, even though towards the end it was kind of it wore on me. I still like believe in accomplishing the mission, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So, and like I don't mean this from an egotistical way, but like I was really good at what I did, and like I was kind of an important person in my unit, and made important decisions, and all this kind of stuff. It was exciting. Like it like lights your brain up, right?
Mhm.
And like it's kind of like if you're a performance athlete or if you're professional athlete or first responders or doctors or certain surgeons. You get used to this level of adrenaline and excitement.
It's
And when you're not
addicting.
in that anymore, yeah, it's a drug.
Definitely
It's
addicting.
Yeah, so like I was a war junkie. So when I got home, like I didn't have that anymore. I didn't everything felt dull.
Hard to acclimate back into, I hate to use the word normal, but normal quasi life of after everything that you've seen.
Yeah, I didn't really know how to heal, where to start. And so yeah, it was very difficult to come back and everything had changed. I was gone for so long. Like I mean, for all those years, yes, but the last part of it, like I said, I spent 6.5 years consecutively in Afghanistan. So the whole world changed by the time I come home.
Mhm.
Uh I mean, even cars look different. So,
Yeah.
it was very different.
Yeah. Yeah. So you returned 2007, 8?
That would have been 2015 by the time
Oh, two.
we got
Okay.
yeah. So after our last 6 years in Afghanistan.
Okay. Oh, so, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, definitely cars look different.
Yeah. So because I went there in about 2008 and we were in Iraq from like '05 to '07, and then 2005 I was on and off in Kuwait. So
Wow. Wow. I can't even imagine some of the things you saw. And I'm assuming that transitioning era, the Army doesn't really help you with that? Just kind of kicks you down the road and you kind of have to fend for yourself, huh?
The Army got better at reintegrating people coming home from deployments towards the end. Like, it took them years to get used to it, to finally get it down. And then they finally got that down. But then when you're a civilian working uh, for another company, working for the military, like I was basically had a military commander who told me what to do, and he was my boss. But you're a contractor, so you're not like, no one cares. You're just like a piece of equipment. And so when we came home, yeah, there was no reintegration. There was no, I did go to the VA because, I mean, we had been in combat from our time in Kuwait. So we qualified for VA, and had been under missile attacks and stuff like that there, and just all other stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan. So the VA helped me some. I think that I went and asked for help, and there was some help that was provided. My therapist that I had there for a few years, she was really into Eastern modalities and mindfulness meditation, and I wasn't really.
Did that start your journey? Was she an integral part of starting that?
Yeah, I think that she definitely helped. And like I said, there were some moments from my time in Afghanistan and before, like, where I had moments of peace where I was like, oh, this makes sense. And then she helped me with a few things, and I think those were all things that had started to trickle down or roll down the mountain, and eventually, I think, would eventually help me find my way. Because I was basically lost coming home in 2015. I was lost for about 7 years.
Wow. So your journey is fairly recent, or
about 2.5 years ago, I had my moment of clarity or understanding or of spiritual awakening. People call it different things.
and talk about that process and how that came to be.
That was unexpected because I think we're all on a path, whether we realize it or not. I didn't know I was on a path. I didn't know I was on a journey. So suddenly I'm sitting here laying in bed one night. My wife's asleep. It's late. And I have this sudden bolt of lightning kind of situation where I like understand the oneness of the universe, that we're all connected. It's very warm, very loving kindness. I understood what my higher purpose was, which was to help people help themselves and find their wholeness within themselves, even if they don't see it. To help people on their spiritual path and find their way. And I knew instantly I wanted to create like a online nonprofit where people could share their journeys and I could share mine. And regardless of faith or philosophy or religious or spiritual belief, we could all have a better conversation and that kind of thing. So it happened like all at once.
And so what is the nonprofit, sir? What does it actually do?
It's designed to bring people together to have a conversation about spirituality, philosophy, religion, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And be empowered within themselves, but be able to sit or stand right next to someone who's also practicing maybe something different, and be supported in an open-minded sort of way, and like this universalist, omnist way, where everything's valid. We don't have to discount this, that, or the other, because like we have all this great human thought from across time and around the world that's pretty rich, and it's all very similar and pointing to this very similar direction. So let's just, have that conversation.
Sure. And we're all coming from different experiences and seeing the world differently.
Yes, perspective, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I find this I find it very fascinating. You talk about you grew up in a sort of a traditional Southern Baptist home, and sort of would you say it was very regimented?
Well, the church was regimented. So I grew both sides of my grandparents, on my mother's side and my father's side, were big Southern Baptists. So both my parents grew up in the church. One of my grandfathers was a education and music minister. The other one was a deacon. Both my grandmothers were super active in the church. And so my parents grew up in that, and they brought us up that way. But my parents were pretty liberal, which was odd. They were open-minded, progressive.
Odd because it didn't align with the doctrine of the church?
At all.
At all?
Politically or ideologically. So
you think it was just something they thought that they should do? Like that was something that they should just carry on, and that's what they did when they were younger, so then they just continued to do that?
Yeah, I think it was habit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it was so ingrained in them. And my dad stopped going. So like when I was pretty young, so my mom still went and took us And then my dad had stopped going to church. He was pretty jaded by the Baptist, understandably so.
Sure.
And so, yeah, but I mean, I would come home and we would have our Sunday lunch after church, and like my parents would ask my sister and I what we learned in Sunday school and what they taught us, and I was like, I don't want to talk about Sunday school. Like, I didn't like church. I never liked church.
Hmm.
And I realized eventually later on that they were like asking me because they wanted to deprogram whatever
Hmm.
I was being taught at Sunday school. Because I mean, like Baptist, growing up in the Baptist church, you're taught like Catholics are going to hell and the Mormons are going to hell, and like of course, everyone else, like everyone who's not Christian, is going to hell.
Hmm.
Like everyone's going to hell, right? Like pretty much everybody's going to hell, but us. Um, so they're deprogramming me from all that. My mom talked about the God of many names, and so she was Christian, but she believed in a very open minded view of religion. So yeah, it's weird that I was raised with this like conservative Southern Baptist church upbringing compared to my home life.
Mm, that's interesting. I know I talked about my family living in Texas, and I lived there briefly. Well, I say briefly, almost 10 years. Growing up in Southern California, though, when I moved there, it was sort of a culture shock on many different levels. But one of them being I had never really experienced a very, lead by the doctrine, the church, the church decides, no music at the weddings, no, like all of these things. I had never experienced anything like that. Most of the churches that I had gone to were very non-denominational, and music was a big part of it. Though our worship was, we had, live music and drums, and it was loud, and we rocked out basically. So then going to, some of my friends' churches when I would move out there, and even some of their weddings, there would be no music allowed at their wedding. And it just always seemed very odd to me, because I think it even speaks in the Bible that, the angels trumpeted and there was, stuff to celebrate. And so then you see this, what I like to refer to as a very people-driven agenda. I don't think that there's a lot of, I don't think it's very biblically based. It's their doctrine. So I can see how that might be hard, why your mom would be like, let's take it down a notch, kind of shift and go in different directions, right? That's interesting. I find it interesting.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild experience, and the church ran the town, right? So like you're like politics of
Oh,
that. So like I mean, it wasn't exactly footloose, but it wasn't unfootloose.
oh, wow. That's
So like
extreme.
so I mean, it wasn't. Sometimes it almost sounds worse when I talk about it than it was, but it's also not, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And there were good people in the church, like, but you nailed it really when you talk about all these man-made touch points.
Hmm.
Right. Like it's all the dogma. It's if you can take religion and separate the dogma from it, religion's usually pretty cool.
Hmm.
It's not much different from spirituality or philosophy once you take the dogma out of it. I mean, if you just read the red letters of Jesus Christ in the New Testament, I mean, that's pretty chill stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's crazy. So I've got one of the questions, and I guess this sort of segues into this. Your opinion on what the difference is between spirituality, art, science, philosophy, religion, and self-help, I think is interesting to throw that in there.
yeah, I think they're all the same thing. I think it's the study of who and what we are and where we're at and where we're going and where we came from. And I think that religion, art, spirituality, science, self-help, philosophy, I think that's the same discussion. I think that people want to say oh, well, science will save us, right? But science by itself probably won't save us. They still can't explain consciousness, Like I respect science. I have a deep appreciation for science, but they can't explain consciousness. They may never be able to explain consciousness, but religion might, or spirituality might, philosophy may. And then art comes from that. And then you look at self-help, self-improvement. I think if you look at that genre, almost all of that is derivative from philosophy, religion, and spirituality. And some science, but some methods of, like whether it's cognitive behavior therapy or neuro linguistic programming or whatever it is that works for self improvement. So I think we're all just seeing all these different things explained by different people, and that's the beauty of being a human. We never know what's going to reach us. We never know what's going to resonate with me as an individual. And even within a specific religion, whether it's like Buddha talking about it or Jesus Christ or one of the yogis from Hinduism, they say the same thing like 20 different ways, because you never know, even within that construct, what's going to resonate within that specific teaching.
So you think it's a matter of who's the person that might be attracted to whatever the buzzwords are that they're using? You think that's what it comes down to?
I really do. I think that what we end up gravitating towards is just because we're speaking that language as it is, whether it's the language of philosophy or the language of religion, or the language of spirituality or science or self improvement. That we're somehow attracted to that modality and that methodology of teaching and hearing and being able to receive it.
That's interesting. You don't think there isn't one, I don't want to say better, but that one is one more stronger than the other?
No, I don't think so. I think that uh I think that they each have their strengths for different people. I think that's why they exist. And I think that's why people build walls around them, or this is right, that's wrong, and it's got to be this way, not that way, because people get so invested in the it might even be, it's like dogma, even if it's not religion. Like scientists can be dogmatic,
Mhm.
philosophers can be dogmatic. It's just, oh, it's got to be this way. This is the only way. Like people see their truth as the truth. Even they can't in their mind say maybe truth is this translatable thing that transcends these walls that we built around these different systems of belief. We're very tribal. Humans are very tribal.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think fear plays a part into any of that?
I think fear plays a huge role in a lot of what we do, and that especially. Yeah, I think that fear is something that humans have this deep understanding of because it's such a big part of us. Because our mind and our ego have kept us alive for thousands of years. Because and largely based on fear. You don't want to. They want to keep us alive. Our mind and ego want to keep us alive. So there's the fear of death. There's the fear of injury, or there's the fear of being hurt. And so fear is this like omnipresent thing in our life because our mind and ego inject it into us because they want to keep us safe.
Mm,
And so humans understand fear, and then humans understand that fear can control humans. So we understand it at an individual level, and then from a organizational level, they understand that it's this awesome system,
control?
manipulation and control. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. So I read also that you're a Bronze Star recipient. That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time in Kuwait. I was doing counterterrorism work. I was doing counterintelligence work, uh, kind of at the same time. And, I was, I did some pretty cool stuff and I did it for a long time and I did it with extreme focus. And I was fortunate enough to have a boss that, took care of people. And I was a junior enlisted person. I think I was only an E4 at the time, specialist. And, which is pretty rare for them to get that kind of award. So I appreciate my boss for taking care of me. He was a really good guy.
I mean, can you give us the situation and what happened?
It wasn't like an act of valor or anything. I don't mine is not an in combat situation. I didn't pull anybody from any type of burning vehicle or anything like that. It was a cumulative thing where I basically hunted terrorists, um, and I hunted spies, and I was really good at it. And I was able to make sure they got captured or put behind bars or
Well,
gated. So
which is, I mean, that was also important, definitely.
yeah, that was mostly for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Do you miss that? You miss the hunt?
That's a really good question. And I mean, I'm a caveat. That's always an important question. That's a hard question for me to answer. I will answer it honestly, though. I'm a spiritualist now. I'm a peace loving person. And if I said that I was completely over that part of my life and it was completely not a part of me anymore, I would be lying. I was a hunter. I was a hunter. That's what I did. I did it for so long. I was really good at it. And I don't miss the destruction of humans that I was a part of. I I sometimes miss that thrill of the hunt. I I don't talk about it very often, but it's a worthwhile question to ask, and I would want to answer it honestly. So, yeah, there's a part of me that I mean, I like when I say I was good at it, I don't, like I said, I was really good at what I did. That's why I did it for so long, and like I said, it lit my brain up in a way that I probably can't describe. So, and I told planes where to go and people where to go, and I mean, I was responsible for a lot of stuff, and it was life and death, and it was constant. So yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that will probably always think that but if they came to me right now and said, we're going to get the band back together and, we're going to go to Syria or Ukraine or wherever, I would probably say no.
You would say no, even though you probably possess a certain set of skills that would further their whatever the agenda might be, you would say no?
I would say no.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So you talk about your spirituality now. So what is your mission now? Do you have a mission now that you're wanting to complete?
Yeah, my higher purpose now, my dharma, as I call it, the Hindu dharma, is to help people help themselves. Like I said, like I what I'm committed to every single day of my life, and for hopefully most moments of my life, is to further that higher purpose. To help people understand that the most important thing they can do is love themselves and take care of themselves first before they do anything else. Like this like radical self-love, right? And that if they do that, it's not selfish, it's the least selfish thing they could ever do. Because then they can be there for other people, they can be there for the rest of the world. They lift you know, when you love yourself completely, when you kind of surrender to that, you lift up the whole world around you just naturally. It just happens. So yeah, that's my purpose, is to kind of get people in touch with that. And also to understand what their higher purpose is. What's their dharma? Why are they here? I think we all have our own individual higher purpose, our own dharma. And so yeah, that's my higher purpose, is to kind of help other people find theirs.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about on this show, um, filling your own cup up first, so then you can better fill other people's cup and do it better, right? I mean, we talk about that. And I do think there is something to be said about serving others in some capacity. I know a lot of people that have done, work, maybe some people that suffer with depression, not that it cures it or takes it away, but a lot of times if you are able to serve others in maybe a lesser situation or something like that, it can in turn also help you to do that. So I think there's that give and take of the world, right? That we have to give to ourselves, right? But then serve others. I think that's important. So that's what you're on your mission to do now.
Yeah, I think for me, everything you're talking about is on point. It's reciprocity, right? It is that give and take. It's that balance. And so I believe in that idea that we do go out and give back to the world. And I think, like I said, I think when we take care of ourselves, we have the ability to go do that.
Yeah. And I would say it starts in the house. I would say it starts right there in your own home. Do you have children? I don't know that I read if you had any or not.
No, we don't have children. We do have a 12-year-old lab that was with us in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow. Okay. But
Working dog.
yeah, so my point though was just, taking care of the home front first to then be able to go out and start, local community and then rise from there and go from there.
Yeah, I think if you don't start from the center and work out, you won't succeed most of the time. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, right? But for the most part, if you don't take care of yourself and then go take care of your nuclear family first and then move out, you won't be successful, because if the people around you aren't kind of living in alignment with themselves and with you, you can't be in alignment with things beyond that, your community and the larger world beyond that.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned the dog, the lab is what you said. Boy or girl?
Boy lab.
What's his name?
Fromer.
Fromer. And he was with both of you in Afghanistan?
Yeah, he has puppy PTSD. So.
Does he really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And he's 12?
He wears a thunder shirt around.
Does it? Oh. But you're your own unit. I mean, that's your own nucleus unit right there to just.
Yeah. Yeah, we're our people. We're each other's people.
And your wife, is she involved in the community stuff as well, trying to be there and help others and grow and do?
Yeah, she's a co-founder along with another woman that's a friend of ours who lives in the Balkans in Bosnia. She grew up in kind of at war in the Balkans and then ended up in Afghanistan working, and that's where we met her. And so yeah, we're all three co-founders, and my wife Stacy, she helps with the creative side and helps make our content and all the videos I'm on. She's the production artistic side of all that.
That's awesome. And do you find, or do you notice like the people that you're helping, are a lot of military? Is it a mix of all backgrounds?
I say that it's mostly not military.
Really?
There are some people that are involved or members that are military, but I think it's mostly just people that are civilians. I like to tell people that all trauma is equal, whether you're a military or, just somebody who had childhood trauma or just trauma in the day-to-day course of their own adult life. Like, it's all valid and significant.
Sure. Sure. I thought maybe there was
Yeah.
a reach out to them as well, but yeah, I can see that.
There's
Um,
so many organizations now that take care of vets. Like it's a very crowded marketplace in like a good way. Like there's a lot of organizations out there helping veterans.
so what is your typical client? So if somebody comes to you, says, I want to work with you one-on-one. Maybe they're, just down, like maybe you were broken down to their last, set of nerves. What's the process? How do you work with them?
The thing that we kind of start out understanding where they're coming from, like what does their life look like? What does their spiritual philosophy and outlook look like for themselves? And what does their day-to-day lifestyle look like as far as their health and wellness and all those habits that come with that, whether it's fitness or sleep or their job. And then further into their job, are they living kind of the way they want to? Are they doing what they want? Is that, are they aligned with their higher purpose? We kind of look at all these things and help them figure out what they need, what they want based on their own values and beliefs that no one else is telling them, not society or their parents or whoever in the past. Just what do you want? What do you need? Where do you want to go? Um, and seeing how they can align their mind, body, soul so that they're living a more peaceful and calm life. So they're engaged with their spiritual self. They're engaged with their physical self from a lifestyle perspective. Because it's that really important part of that intersection of our spiritual journey and path in this concrete reality we share with everybody every day. We've got to go out there. Most of us aren't going to be monks living in the foothills of the Himalayas. So how do we live spiritually in this world? And so we talk about kind of all that, and each client's different. It's something that is kind of customized, but there's a process involved with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the physical part. Our bodies are our vessels, right? So I've talked a lot of times on this show, coming from a place of, I didn't make it a priority to take care of myself, and then coming full circle and making that absolutely, for a plethora of reasons as to why that needs to be almost at the top of the list of why that part needs to come first. And then of course mentally and things like that. But I think a lot of people either take it for granted or maybe haven't had anything that's been significant enough for them to pay attention to their bodies. They just kind of take it for granted that it'll be there tomorrow, and we just keep plugging along or pushing ourselves. And I think I think it's important to take that time and really, it goes back to just investing in yourself and making that physical part of that.
Yeah, it's really hard to find the time and space to be like intentionally and aware spiritually if you don't have that base built for yourself. We talk about fitness and health and wellness, and there's also financial wellness. Like if you're not happy in your job and you don't have a solid financial kind of ground and footing that you're in, you're going to always be worried about where the next dollar is coming from and like
Hmm.
that. And it's not about
And it takes a toll.
like getting, yeah, it does. It's not about worrying about money. It's not superficial. We have to decide how we want to live in the world.
Mm.
And once we decide that, then we can kind of, like we were talking about, be centered, grounded, and move into that more spiritual aspect of things. But you have to kind of prioritize yourself and your wellness because it's how we move through the world. It's how
That's all we have.
reality.
That's really all we
Yeah.
have. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very important. And I think it's interesting that you bring up the financial aspect of it, not necessarily for the monetary or what can I get, but just that peace of mind. And, it does talk about in the Bible being good stewards with our money and then making the choices and doing well with that. And so I think all of that sort of aligns with, then comes the peace, the freedom, whether it's financial freedom, physical freedom, whatever that is, that word freedom, I think is a pull for me anyway, just to keep going towards that goal or that motivation, right? Because I say all the time, choose your hard, right? If you don't choose your hard, whatever you think is going to be easy street today will eventually become hard. So it's important.
No, I love that. And we do have all these choices. I think that's part of understanding we can't set ourselves aside and tell ourselves we don't have choices. We have choices in everything that we do. We have choices about the relationships that we're in, whether they're romantic or non-romantic. We have choices about where we decide to live, like geographically. We have choices about um, what we do with our life as far as the work and vocation goes. We make all these choices, and we have a choice to change that at any point. Like we are supremely in charge of ourselves, especially if we live in a free country or we live in a free part of the world. We have that freedom, and so like systemically, we know that systemically, in a larger sense, everyone can't just walk out of poverty or walk out of a domestic violence situation. But from an individual perspective, one person, we each individually have that power to make a choice and to decide to do something different, um, or to keep doing the same thing, or whatever it may be. But it's choices.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes they may not be obvious choices or they'll be the harder choices, but they're definitely there for sure.
Right.
Yeah. So, wow, interesting. So, would you say um so you're a spiritual being and so there's not really a one philosophy that you follow or there is a philosophy maybe that you follow more than others?
So as a whole, I'm a universalist. So like I said, I believe everything's valid. But within that, I subscribe more to Hinduism, Taoism, and like the balance of the universe, the balance between light and dark. And there's some indigenous pagan beliefs that resonate with me. There's some Native American Anishinaabe traditions that I read about in like Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer and stuff like that that I don't practice, but help inform my own spiritual practice, my own ideas. So it's kind of a combination, but I'd say Hinduism is probably the biggest contributor to my belief system, but it's modified with some other aspects of spirituality and religion from around.
Wow, that's interesting. Do you have a certain like specific thing that drew you to that or just getting to know it more than others?
I read a lot, and when I had my kind of moment of understanding or clarity, since I wasn't a spiritualist or interested in that at the time, I had no point of reference for vocabulary or history. I mean, I knew a little bit about stuff, but so I went and read like 60 books in 4 months about religions around the world, and I found that as I was like rotating between like Hinduism and Buddhism and the Abrahamic faiths and New Age spirituality and paganism and philosophy, when I rotate back around to Hinduism, I would always, because I kind of rotate through, I would recognize that those books really spoke to me, and more so than the others. And the other ones were really important and deeply impacted me, but not in the same way.
Mm.
So it just resonated with me. Not the kind of personal gods like Krishna or any of the individual gods, but like the pantheistic universal idea of like the universal Brahman and like we're all one, the oneness of everything. That aspect of Hinduism
Mm.
is what really
That's
resonates.
interesting. And so this awakening that you talk about, was it one specific event? Was it something that had occurred over time?
No, it was one event, and my life's never been the same. It was 2.5 years ago. I guess it was in the fall of 2021, is when it was.
And it was just waking up and just feeling a
Yeah,
presence maybe? What's
I felt I felt like we're all like, I am that and you are that. So we are that together. Like you and I are the same. We're kind of like the same entity having a conversation. Like we're all part of the universe. We're all, whether it's a tree or it's a plant or a rock or an animal or a human, we're all part of the same collective universal being. And that was kind of my understanding in the moment.
Mhm. And that triggered you to want to go out and just talk with others about that and do that kind of work.
I wanted, yeah, exactly. And one thing I wanted to do was go study spirituality, religion, and philosophy so that I could have conversations with people, just like you and I are having right
Mhm.
now, so that I could talk to as many different people as possible. And that whoever I was talking to, I would have some point of reference about their faith and their belief so that we could have a conversation and maybe I could learn something from them. Maybe they
Mm.
could learn something from me, but I don't have to convince them of anything. And I don't need them to convince me of anything. Just
Sure.
have a conversation.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like the openness about it.
Mm.
I can respect that for sure. So if you follow the Hindu philosophy, then there's others sprinkled in there about, um, it, I guess maybe the question would be, does that help you like write your own story of what your next day looks, your year looks, your like, is there a journey that you're on, or it's just from person to person and you hope to have these open-minded conversations, and wherever that leads, hopefully it's with kindness and being one, right? I'm just trying to understand.
No, no, it's a great question. I guess the answer is yes. But no,
All of that to get a yes. Okay.
yeah, but I'm just kidding. For me, every day is what I want to do is I'm trying to like grow a community of people that can be empowered within themselves and hopefully keep doing that. And if other people can be a part of that, we can support each other in this non-dogmatic, non-rigid sort of way where it's 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 uh it's very freeing for each individual person, but they're still empowered within themselves so that they can know their strength. They know that they have light within themselves. And my mission is to do that every day, to keep doing that, whether it's on a small scale and there's 50 people or whether it's a big scale and there's more than that. It doesn't make a huge difference to me. I just want to keep doing it. And if I can help more people help themselves, then I feel good that I'm able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, like I said, it starts with self-love and yourself. So if every day I can wake up and be a better person for myself and be a better person for the family around me and the community around me,
Mm-hmm.
and love my neighbor and have loving kindness for all these people, even if I don't agree with them. I'm out of politics now, but even if I don't agree with people like philosophically or politically, which I'm trying to get away from, but even if I disagree with them, I just love my neighbor
Sure.
and try to have that radical loving kindness for everything and just try to give back to the world.
Mm-hmm. So, two follow-up questions. One would be, so you don't think that any supreme being would have given power to any person or to help them along the way? You think it all comes from within?
That is an extremely complicated question. I'll do my best.
Okay.
I
And yeah,
believe
this is not argumentative.
No.
I'm just trying to understand. Like, okay.
no, I love this.
Okay.
I love this. This is one reason I do this. I love talking
Okay.
about this. I think whether you call it the divine, whether you call it God with the big G or little g, whether you call it Allah or Christ or the Brahman or the Tao, it might be the self with a capital S inside of you that you believe in. It might be base consciousness if you're a scientist who knows consciousness probably exists and postulate, but they can't quite prove it, but they know it's there. Call it any of those things. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I would call it all of those things and more.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I don't believe God or the divine is this sentient knowing thing. I think it is the universe. I don't think it's not anthropomorphic. It's not humanesque. It doesn't care one way or the other. I think it embodies in the light, the loving kindness, and the darkness. There's a lot of counter to that. So I think it's all about how we talk about it. And like I said, then build walls around it. But that's the best that I can describe it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in all that. I believe in for some indigenous pagan beliefs, it's ancestors and the people that came from before us. And I believe in that because that's how I ended up here talking to you and vice versa. A whole bunch of miracles had to happen for us to even be sitting here existing.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the million and billion chances that we shouldn't be here. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
Good. Okay. I was trying to get a deeper understanding. I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything.
No, I happy to talk about it.
Yeah. No, I find it interesting. And and like you pointed out, we all have our maybe set beliefs or set ways of how we do process that. But I think it is, I don't think there's anything wrong with having an open conversation. Like you said, either you learn something or I learn something, to be open about it. And my other follow-up question would be, how has it been for you to try to step away from the religiosity or the politics of what we're surrounded with every day? How do you, because it's really hard to just walk around, and I know people on the radio can't see me, but I'm sort of have my blinders on. It's really hard to do that because no matter the situation or where you're in or what you're doing, there's going to be some sort of thing you're going to have to answer for or decide what side you're going to be on, right? It's that old, the old saying, you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. So how do you manage to step out from that? Have you been able to?
That's a great question too. Yes, I think I have been able to a large degree. From the religious perspective, it was easy because I was never a big Christian, even though I was raised Christian. So that was easy. From the harder thing for me was disengaging from a geopolitical national perspective because I lost my youth and came up in my young adult in this military industrial complex machine, and I was taught, I was a student of geopolitics, so Russia bad, China bad, the US is this great beacon of whatever, So I've had to really work on not being a nationalist, like America great, I've had to work on not being invested like in the Ukrainian Russia conflict. I'm really frustrated with what Russia did. It's been difficult, but I have to look at it and say it's awful what's happening to the Ukrainian people. It's also awful what's happening to all these young Russian men that don't want to be there and getting killed and maimed, and that's awful. And if it's like Israel and Palestine, like pick your side, it's awful on both sides. Like there's killing happening on both sides. And people are like, oh, well, that's easy to say both sides. It's like, well, I see everything from a human perspective. And so, yeah, it's been very difficult for me to disengage geopolitically and not look at countries as these nation states, but instead look at and say, look, these are just humans. And if we decide to go look around the world and not see human beings, that's the least Judeo-Christian thing that could ever be done.
Sure.
As Westerners, and yet we choose to do that. A lot of us are choosing to not even live those Judeo-Christian values that our society has taught us of kindness. And if you look at the pure teachings of Christ or the pure teachings of Judaism or even Islam, like the message is that it all goes back to the golden rule. Every faith has a golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Loving kindness comes across in every religion, from Buddhism to Christianity. And we choose not to live that way. We ignore that when it comes to national politics or to international geopolitics. So for me, it's been very difficult. And I've had to work on it intentionally and aware. I mean, I've even, like when I went to go get my life coaching certification and went to school for 9 months, you'd have to coach back and forth with people to practice. I coached on that as the client because we would switch back and forth each week, and I would bring that up and work on it because it's something I had to work on. Is being less attached to the fact that national borders exist. I feel tremendously grateful to have been born in America and for everything this country's given me. But I can say that we are very imperfect. In the world, we're all humans. And so that's a kind of a long answer to that question.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I can appreciate it. And then I guess my last follow-up would be, though, I feel like at least some of the things that I've seen, especially recently, I feel like there's something missing, and maybe being a military man, you can sort of speak to this, but I feel like there's something missing in sort of the American pride that that used to exist, that I used to see growing up with. And I don't know, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of influence from other things. But at the end of the day, shouldn't there still be some sort of, even you said, very blessed to be born in this country. So shouldn't there still be some sort of thing instilled that maybe not for places of being better than everybody else, but still prideful that this is where we were born, this is our country, this is what we want to, take care of?
I think that we can, yeah, absolutely. I believe we can see the transhuman nature of the world and the fact that we're all human and still appreciate and have gratitude for the fact that I was born in this country. I should have gratitude for that.
Yeah.
When I was in Afghanistan, like I'd be on base and we'd watch like an Indian truck driver that drove a fuel truck, and they would be digging in our trash can outside of our camp for shoes or whatever, and they
basically
were making
your scraps, basically
$1 a day or whatever it was, right? So like, and they were essentially they were indentured servants. They would take their passports away, and so I think having gratitude is important. Having gratitude is important for everything, right?
Sure.
We should all have gratitude.
Yes.
Because gratitude's awesome. Gratitude is the best.
And it changes perspective on so much. Yes.
Massively. So yeah, that's a whole other podcast, right? But yes, we should have gratitude for the fact that I was born in this awesome place. And it's okay to say it's awesome. It's also okay to say it has tremendous problems.
100%. But that's the point I think I'm getting to.
Gratitude.
Yeah. But that's what I think I'm getting to. I think, and again, it seems like maybe afraid's the wrong word, but they're almost afraid to say, I'm proud that I was born in America. And that's the part that I think we're sort of lacking in, to, okay, give a balanced view of both sides. But at the end of the day, like you said, you weren't born in this country. You weren't born in this country. You're not, you have opportunity that maybe others weren't. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I feel like that prideful of being from this country is missing for sure.
No, that's true. And I think it's all about balance. I believe, this is my belief, that I believe we are the gray walking the balance of the universe. We are the universal balance, we as individuals, right? And if you look at the yin and the yang, they get the light and the dark, right? So we're that line in between. And to our right is light, to our left is dark, and we're in the middle. So we have to appreciate the darkness for what it is. It exists. It's never going away, part of the universe. But we get to choose where we put our focus.
Mm-hmm.
Do we focus on the dark? Do we focus on the light? We get to choose where we put our attention, right? Where our mind goes, our energy flows. So all we have to do is walk that balance to understand we are that balance, that the darkness exists, appreciate it for what it is, but we can look at the light.
Yeah, it certainly can't be ignored. I think that's a bad way to go. You can't ignore the darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, okay, I will rescind my question. You've been in the hot seat long enough.
Oh, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, I think it was a wonderful conversation, though. And why don't you tell the audience where they can find you if they want to find more?
Sure. Our community webpage is kishar.org. It's KISHAR.org. That's the entrance to our community. We have monthly memberships. We have individual guidance and coaching sessions, everything. All the funds go back into the community. None of the founders take a salary or anything like that. And we also have social media. We're at Kishar Spiritual on most of those platforms. And we have a pretty cool YouTube channel. You brought it up.
And I'll make sure all of that is put in the show notes. And, if they want to reach out to you. And I really do want to just completely tell you, I appreciate this kind of conversation where I might disagree with you. It's still good, like we had said, to have this conversation in a respectful way, and we're not attacking each other, and we're not, there's no hate because you think a certain way or I think a certain way. And I wish that more of us could come together and do that, because that's where I think it's at.
Same. This is what I hope that we can do in the world, is more of us can have conversations like this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate so much, John, you coming on, and I appreciated your messy story for sure, and definitely thankful for your service. And hopefully we can chat again soon.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the message you're putting out in the world as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Everything's Messy podcast. If you don't mind, if you'd head on over to wherever you listen to your podcast at and subscribe, maybe leave me a review. I would totally appreciate that. If you'd like to be considered to be a guest on our podcast, please reach out to me at everythingsmessy@gmail.com. You can also find me on social media at Everything's Messy Podcast on Instagram. I'm also on X, which was Twitter, at Everything's Mess, and Facebook at Everything's Messy Podcast. Once again, I'd love to hear from you in any capacity and anything that you'd like to share with me. Thanks again for listening.